Hi everyone, I hope you're doing well. Welcome to lesson 26. Our aim today is how do we perform transformations of the quadratic function. So let's start with the do now. The do now says using the calculator, graph the function f of x is equal to x squared. So that's what we're going to do first. I'm going to go to my calculator. I'm going to click my y equals. I'm going to type in x squared because that's what they're asking us to graph. I'm going to press second graph, and I'm going to write down these points. So as you can see, I took what was on my calculator screen here, and I put it onto my paper. Now I'm going to plot these points. So let's start with the first one, -3, 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Then I'm going to plot -2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Then I'm going to plot -1, 1, 0, 0, and so on. So now after I've plotted all of my points, I'm going to connect them. I'm going to make a parabola. And I'm going to label this f of x equals x squared. So now I'm going to use my calculator again to graph y is equal to x minus 3 squared minus 2 on that same graph, on that same set of axes. So I'm going to go to my calculator. To go to my y equals, I'm going to clear out what I have. I'm going to put in exactly as I see it. I'm going to do open parenthesis x minus 3 close parentheses squared minus 2. Now in order to find the points that are going to be on this graph, I'm going to press second and graph. And now I have the points that are going to be on this graph. Now I'm going to copy down onto my paper the points that I will actually be able to plot on this graph. I'm going to write this down and plot the points in blue. Okay, so now that I've copied my points from my table onto my piece of paper, I'm going to graph these points. So I'm going to start with 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Then I'm going to move on to 1, 1, 2, 2, -1, 1, 2, 3, -2, 1, 2, and so on. Now that I've plotted all of my points, I'm going to connect them. And I'm going to label this y is equal to x minus 3 squared minus 2. So I just want to look at the next little portion first before we actually start talking about the do now. So down here it says the parent function for quadratics is f of x is equal to x squared. The graphs for all other quadratic functions are shifts of the parent function. So let's talk about what that means. They're basically saying that our parent function, which is f of x is equal to x squared, any other quadratic that you see is basically just a shift of that f of x is equal to x squared. So you can see here in green, it looks exactly the same as the blue, right? Except all I did with the green is I moved it over and I moved it down. And we'll talk about those rules in a second. And then the next portion says that the translations or shifts of quadratic functions are similar to the shifts of absolute value functions, which you should have already seen in Algebra 1. Okay, so now let's take a look at these rules. So when we're taking our original parent function, y is equal to x squared, and we're adding a k, we are moving up k units. And when we are taking our y is equal to x squared, that parent function, and we're subtracting k, we're moving down k units. So when you're looking at actual translations, you won't see k, you'll see like x squared plus 2, and that would mean that we're moving up 2 units. Or you would see y is equal to x squared minus 2, and that would mean that we were moving down 2 units. So these are called vertical shifts. So that means when we're adding a number or we're subtracting a number outside of parentheses, we are moving up and down. So now let's look at what happens when we subtract or when we add inside the parentheses. So when we subtract h, and remember h would actually be a number, we're moving to the right h units. So say it was like x minus 2, we would just be moving to the right 2. And then if we were adding h inside of our parentheses, we would be moving to the left h units. Okay, if we took x plus 2, we would be moving to the left 2 units, or just 2. So these are horizontal shifts. So that means that if we're subtracting a number inside the parentheses or we're adding a number inside the parentheses, we know that we're going to be moving either left or right. So if you look back up at our do now, we went from our parent function, which was f of x is equal to x squared, to down here, y is equal to, we open parenthesis, x minus 3 squared minus 2. So let's look at these numbers that we are subtracting, and let's make sure that we followed the rules here, basically. So let's look. Look back down here at our little key to help us with translations. So if we're subtracting 3 inside of my parentheses, that's down here, right? We're subtracting inside of my parentheses. That means that we're moving to the right. And since we subtracted 3, we're moving to the right 3. Now let's look at what should have happened if we subtracted 2 outside of the parentheses. So let's look over here. If we're subtracting 2 outside of my parentheses, we should have gone down. And how many was it? 2. So if you look back at our graph, remember we started with f of x is equal to x squared, that first green parabola. And then I made the blue parabola, the y is equal to x minus 3 squared minus 2. And what I said I should have done is I should have moved right 3 and down 2 from the green to the blue. So what I did here is I just made the vertex of both of these parabolas like lime green, so it'd be really obvious for us to actually make sure that we did that we moved correctly. So basically, this is the same exact thing. This is the same parabola. I just moved it. So when I go to, when I subtracted 3 inside my parentheses, I should have gone to the right 3. So let's start at our green parabola. Let's make sure that we went over 3. So we went over 1, 2, 3. Good. And then over here, it says that we should have gone down 2. And after we went over 3 to the right, 1, 2, 3, we also went down 2. So we know that we correctly graphed this. Let's take a look at some other examples. Okay, so example number 2 says the function f of x is graphed on the set of axes below. So they already gave us f of x. I'm just going to label that. Okay, so that f of x is in black. On the same set of axes, graph f of x plus 1 plus 2. So this is a little bit different than what we've seen. We keep seeing our quadratics written out with those squares, but it's the same thing. It's just a different way to write it. So they already give us that function f of x plotted. So now we have to determine how am I going to move this. So let's do that first. So let's go up to our little key. So when we have x and then a +1 inside my parentheses. If it's inside my parentheses, this is where I'm looking, and we're moving to the left, however, whatever number they're adding. So we're going to go to the left 1. And then if we're adding a number outside of my parentheses, we're going to look up here, right? This is where we're adding a number outside of our parentheses. We're going to go up that number. So we have up 2 because we added 2. So now what I did is I created points on my original parabola in order to be able to move to my new parabola. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move each one of these points to the left 1 and up 2. So let's start with our vertex first. So I'm going to go for my vertex point. I'm going to go to the left 1, and then I'm going to go up 2, and I'm going to put a red point there. That is my new vertex. With my other point, I'm just going to put a slash through it so that I know that I plotted it for my new parabola. Okay, so now let's go to this point right here. I'm going to go to the left 1 and up 2. I'm going to put a red point there, and I'm going to put a slash through that point because I know I moved it. Okay, now with this point, I'm going to go to the left 1 and up 2. I'm going to put a point, put a slash through it, and I suggest that you guys do this with a different, maybe like a pen or a pencil, or 2 different colored pencils, or like 2 different colored pens, because it is easier when you do it this way. If you do this all in the same colored ink, you might get confused and start connecting points that aren't in the same parabola. Okay, so let's continue. I have this point right here. I'm going to go to the left 1, up 2, cross it off. I'm going to go to the left 1, up 2, cross it off. I've got 2 more points. I'm going to go to the left 1, up 2, cross it off, over to the left 1 and up 2. And now I've plotted all of my new points. Now I'm going to connect these. Going to create my new parabola, and I'm going to label it f of x plus 1 plus 2. And that's it. This can be a very difficult skill, so please make sure that you are practicing. Okay, let's look at one more example. I would pause the video now, try the next one on your own, and then we'll go through it. Okay, so my you try example, it says the function f of x is graphed on the set of axes below. On the same set of axes, graph f of x minus 3 minus 1. Okay, so let's take a look at what these things mean. So what does minus 3 mean, and what is inside my parentheses, and what does minus 1 outside my parentheses look like? So let's go back up. If I'm subtracting inside my parentheses, right, it looks more like this one. If I'm subtracting inside of my parentheses, I'm going right. So I'm going to the right 3. And then over here, if I'm subtracting outside of my parentheses, I'm going down. So I'm going to go down 1. Okay, so what I'm going to do next is I'm going to create my points on my parabola. So I have a point here, I have a point here, and a point here. And I have a point here and a point here. So what you should have done next is move all of these points. So we're going to take each one of these points and we're going to move to the right 3 and down 1. So let's take our vertex point. I'm going to move that first. I'm going to go to the right 3, 1, 2, 3, and I'm going to go down 1. I put my new vertex and I cross off that point. This point here, I'm going to go to the right 1, 2, 3, and down 1. Cross off that point. This point here, I'm going to go to the right 3, 1, 2, 3, and I'm going to go down 1. Cross off that point. 2 more. I'm going to go to the right 3, 1, 2, 3. Ooh, I'm sorry. I should have gone down 1. So make sure you move both. So not just go right. You got to go down 2. So you got to go to the right 3, 1, 2, 3, and then down 1. I'm a little ahead of myself. And then I go to the right 3, 1, 2, 3, and down 1. Cross off that point. Now that I have used a different color, it's super easy for me to see where my new parabola is. I connect all my points, I create a parabola, I label it f of x minus 3 minus 1, and that's it. Please make sure that you're completing your Delta Math, and I hope you have a good day. Have a good one.